Hey, this is Jon God. I am giving an apology in advance because my initial recording of it got corrupted while saving. So this is pieced together from three different recordings, and there is a gap about a minute in that I just kind of crossfaded between the two sections, but there's a few minutes missing. So I apologize in advance, but I hope you enjoy the entire interview. What is also missing in the gap is my introductions for the people as part of this interview. We have Mark Steven Pierce, who is the original creator of Dark Castle and Beyond Dark Castle in 1986, 1987. Zack Black, who created Return to Dark Castle, and Nickolas Burdick, who is working with Mark on the new Dark Castle game. Right. Well, welcome everyone. We've got a few people watching, and we'll have a video up later for everybody that couldn't be here to this moment. I know it was very last minute, but we're all here, and it's all good. So, let's see.
Right on.
So I go by Jon God online. I'm sure, especially old Mac game communities, but it's funny to see me.
Wait,
People still
tell me your real name again. Okay.
Chris.
Okay. Yeah.
We'll stop at that though. Anyway,
Right.
so I thought I'd go over some things with I grew up with a father that loved technology in the 80s and 90s that just wanted to have the latest and greatest. And so when I was a kid, we had a Mac SE, which was like the high end version of the Plus, and
Mm-hmm.
and he would get all sorts of games and audio and video apps and stuff. And he just had lots of fun with it. And Dark Castle was among those, and we had all sorts of famous ones from back then, like Shufflepuck Cafe, Fool's Errand, so on and so forth.
VP of product development there. We did San Francisco Rush, Area 51, Maximum Force, and the Gauntlet. What was it called? Gauntlet Legends, I think it was called. So we had some nice success there, and then I moved on and started my own company. Um, at that time, I was probably playing, again, all through 2000, mostly arcade games, whether virtual, and all the 3D games came out, Pro Fighter and all that kind of stuff. That was really cool. Loved playing Street Fighter in the early 90s, played that one a lot. Um, and then as I started Super Happy, we started doing console games and created right now I'm playing mostly mobile games is what I play. More of the casual ones, of course, Clash of Clans. I got addicted to that for too long. Right now I'm playing Marvel Strike Force, which is not even a game. You just have to go and check the red dots off every day. So
That's your
somehow
chores.
somehow I'm addicted to it right now. So, and then of course all the other mobile games, whether it's Candy Crush or I don't know, what's the CRX Racing. I go through long periods of maybe half a year where I play those games every day for an hour or so.
Okay.
Most of my time is spent though making games as opposed to playing games. So I realize that
That
now
is
as
the
I've been,
curse, isn't it?
I've been on the Discord group. All the folks here, obviously game fanatics, right? Obviously, and I never got to that level of fandom with games, but I did get to that level with making them. I'm working on the new version of Dark Castle now, and that's what I want to do all day. It's just push pixels all day long. So mostly mobile games recently is probably where I've been playing. Although the Vampire Survivors, I got totally into Vampire Survivors now that I think about it. And then for reference to, I go and play Metroid Prime and Dead Cells and even Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles because that's kind of old school. And I just
Yeah.
look at that. I don't think it's a great game or anything, but I'm just looking at it for inspiration and stuff. So,
Yeah, I mean, inspiration
um,
can be
you know,
found anywhere. All right.
so yeah, that's basically it with the ones I play.
Fair enough. All right, Zach, I got some questions for you. So,
Yeah.
one thing is I've talked to you before, and I know you were very much adjacent or inspired by Dark Castle and VR.
Um, I haven't. I've put some thought into it a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
When I was really getting into VR, and a couple of years ago when I started getting Beyond Dark Castle working, or not Beyond Return working in Unity, like the thoughts kind of started to creep in there. It's like, oh, some of these things, as far as especially like throwing mechanics and climbing mechanics, would work really well. Jumping, not so much. Could be a lot of
motion sickness there. But I don't know, all the stuff you tend to adapt to after playing for a while, and I don't know. I think it could be really. I don't know if you could like get all of the classic levels to work the same way that you would expect to be able to run through and play it, but you could certainly build some levels inspired by some of the original rooms and have them work in virtual reality. It's something I would love to play around with.
Well, it's cool you put some thought into it. I definitely had
Yeah.
thought. My thought at one point was just like it'd be interesting to have a VR version of just standing around in the castle, looking at things and getting a sense of scale. Like even if there wasn't
Oh yeah.
gameplay attached to it, that alone would have some value to it. But anyway,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, just having it available as like a meta world or whatever you can just jump into and look around. Be neat.
well, I'm going to ask you the same question I asked Mark. And what was some of your old
Yeah.
favorite games back? Wherever you would consider like the classic games, and then what are some of
Oh,
your
gee,
modern day favorite games? And I'm not going to ask what your
man.
favorite is because that's unfair. So just what comes to mind.
Wait, sorry, you're not going to ask what? What was the?
Oh, I'm not going to ask you for what your exact favorite is because it always puts somebody on the
Oh,
spot. So just what comes to mind.
oh, geez, how much time do we have? Like, I played in high school days. I tried. We rented probably one or two Nintendo games like every weekend. Like Nintendo. My brother had a Sega system, and then we had the Super Nintendo. So it's like it was just games, 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 and that's really like what inspired me to want to program them. Is we would play them, and it'd be really fun. It'd be like, oh, this game would be so much better if we could change this one little thing about it. It's like, and so your mind just naturally starts thinking about game design and things that you would want to do. And so yeah, I mean, favorites. My buddy and I were always into what now would be classified as couch co-op, and so you can sit in front of a TV with two controllers or four controllers and do split screen. Um, Bomberman, my friends and family like played that game to death. Like that's one of our all-time favorites.
I love that one too.
Zach Morris and I used to do Rock and Roll Racing is another split screen sort of top down kind of isometric racing game that had combat and all this classic like rock music. I mean those would be like the things I really think about when I think of like I dabble around a lot. That I install a lot of games that I play for 2 minutes and delete and go, that was me. It's cool. I appreciate it, but I'm just not going to dump time into it. Because like Mark said, it's like I really do my best to try to not let myself get sucked in, and I have so much time that I need to devote to game development that it's hard to play. But I do play them. I have like a standing PC gaming night with a friend of mine who lives in Kentucky. So every Tuesday night we just devote the last half of the evening for 4 to 5 hours and just play online games with each other, and it's fantastic. I mean, we'll pick something and stick to it for 1, 2, 4, 6 months, how until we decide we're burned out on it. So yeah, some of our favorites on there have been like Ship of Fools is a really great like kind of jump in and do a run, and it's just sort of it's similar to like I think it's been compared to like FTL, like Faster Than Light,
I gotcha.
but it's a great little multiplayer shooter game. My buddies and I played probably one of my favorite games of all time now has got to be Factorio. It's like if you like SimCity type games, but you want to go in and program every tiny little detail about how the city works and operates. Like I don't even know what my hours are in that game now. It's probably pushing 1,000 hours, and it's just they keep coming out with updates, and we'll jump back into it and we'll play it for 6 months, and it always amazes me how incredibly deep and complex that game is, and how they managed to make it work. It's like a programmer's dream game.
Yeah, I had.
It's like being able
Oh, go ahead.
to, yeah. I was just going to say, it's like being able to play video games and program video games at the same time. It's like it's that level of complexity. It's just fantastic. What
Yeah.
were you going to say?
Oh, there's another game that had a similar feel to it, which was Tomorrow Corporation. The people that did World of Goo and Little Inferno and such did a game called Human
Okay.
Resource Machine, and you're
Hmm.
working as somebody in an office who is uh, designing a robot sort of to do tasks. And so all of the tasks are basically just programming things, just kind of obfuscated a little bit. And then you put in this robot, okay, when you see this, do this. And then you get points based on essentially how efficient you can do it and how the least amount of moves you can do it, how the least amount of like actions and everything. And it's a very interesting game, and it hits that same programmer's mind kind of a thing, because it's a puzzle game on how efficient you can code something very simple with very simple tools.
Tell me the name again.
It's called Human Resource Machine.
Human Resource Machine. Okay, I'll have to look that up because it sounds right up my alley.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. I like their games. Not all of them hit for me, but all of them are quality games, and if they don't hit for you, they're going to hit for somebody else. So always
right on. Yeah.
I mean, World of Goo is still talked about, and that came out in, 2007 or something? So.
Sure. Yeah.
All right. So, Nick, I got some questions for you. All right. So
Lovely. Let's hear them.
So you're, pretty much a newcomer to the Dark Castle series. So what's been your experience kind of dipping your feet in and learning about it, and just like, it must be kind of strange to be like, okay, here's this community for this very old game that I probably hadn't even heard of, a year ago, and just kind of get like, what's been your whole experience with this?
Yeah, well, my first experience was, at least from the player's perspective, is that this game is extremely difficult. I hadn't heard of the series before I started working on this project, so it was all completely new to me. I was born in '95, so I feel like a baby compared to most people who grew up playing this game. I wasn't even alive yet. No, but it's been really cool just seeing how this community is still together. I feel like a lot of the times, older games kind of, at least, they have their communities and whatnot, but they kind of just trickle out and fall apart because, with the old like forums and whatnot kind of dying out, being a dying breed. It's kind of cool seeing Discord play a role in that as well with, people, like these communities are able to stay together all these years later, and, stay strong and still talk about the game up to this point. I was really surprised to see that, after all this time, there's still a still a strong standing community here to play, and enjoy the game still. But as far as the introduction to the series goes, I just kind of YouTubed, hey, what's Return to Dark Castle, and she's actually in here. Sally Cat's series this is my first time I ever saw anything Dark Castle related, was watching her play Return to Dark Castle.
Out.
So thank you for introducing me to Dark Castle. Other than just being told kind of what it is, but. I was just watching a lot of gameplay, and I remember watching her series too. I'm like, this game doesn't seem too bad. Like, I got this. Like, it'll be really easy to get into it. And then I think it took me like a whole actual work day's amount of time to get through Fireball on beginner. So I definitely had the growing pains of learning, and I remember like thinking to myself, like, I need 100% this game on advanced at some point. Like, how am I even going to do that? But I think that's the beautiful thing about this game, is that it gives you the sense of just not only discovery, but just you feel so good when you finally get past a level. Like it just beats you up, and then you learn the patterns, and you can do it with your eyes closed. And I think that progression is something that there's nowadays games just as full of hand holding and tutorials that last the whole game instead of just the introduction and then you're on your own. So that was definitely a breath of fresh air for this game and the series, is that it doesn't pull back any punches. It knocks you down a bunch, and then you learn, and then you grow, and then you feel better about being a gamer because you're able to, complete all these challenges. So it's been a really cool experience just in general, from learning what this is to now being a part of the community. So
yeah, well, we welcome you, that's for sure.
Thank you.
Piggybacking off of that, I think one of the things that both makes Dark Castle difficult but also fair is knowing that every jump has a specific length that it goes. Every angle that you can throw rocks is very specific. So there's no situations where like a jump is impossible, because the levels are very well designed around these are the lengths that you can make jumps. And so once you start to just kind of naturally get, okay, this is how long my jump's going to go, this is how far I can fall till I get dizzy and stuff like that, then it becomes kind of, okay, this is the framework I'm working within. And I can now just be, I can Neo in the Matrix and get through all of these screens because I now know all of the fundamental information that I need, and it kind of puts it apart from something like Mario, where Mario you're constantly using physics for jump. You can turn around in mid jump and such. Where this is very specific on exactly how far your jump can go, and there's nothing affecting that beyond your own timing, and so it's just that learning in the beginning, and I think that makes it sort of unique. So, yeah. So I'm picking up that you've worked with Mark before, Nick. Before this,
Correct. Yeah. So I first met Mark. It was actually my first, I guess, technically AAA professional experience in the game industry. Was working with Mark at Visual Concepts. So he was executive producer there, and I was QA, and we worked on Lego 2K Drive together. So we worked together for about 2 years. I was QA there, and then eventually, I actually don't know. I never really talked to Mark about it, but I was QA at first, and then I was offered a position to like transfer to production assistant instead of QA, and I was kind of working with Mark directly at that point. I never really knew how that came about because there's a lot of really talented QA on the project, and definitely a lot of people who were capable of being producer. And then I remember Mark just kind of pulled me into his office and said, "Hey, you want to be in production instead?" And I'm like, "I guess I don't know what I'd really do, but sure. If you have faith in me, then I'd be more than happy to." And Mark's always been a really good guy, so working with him again is really cool. But yeah, the way this all started was maybe June, July of last year. This was after we there was like a big layoff at Visual Concepts, so most of the team was gone. And then I got a message on LinkedIn from Mark, and we kind of reconnected a little bit, and he's like, "Hey, I'm working on this project, Dark Castle. Like, are you interested in maybe coming on and being producer for Loot It?" And he kind of gave me the rundown of what Loot It was and what he's trying to do with it. And I immediately said yes. I was very excited to be back in the industry because if those of you who don't know, the industry just in general, it was rough when I first got into it, but even so now it's very difficult to kind of get into the industry, I think, at the moment. And like there's a lot of very talented people that I worked with at VC who still are looking for work to this day. So when Mark offered me the job, I was like, absolutely, let's do this. Like I have that itch, to get back in the industry because it really is difficult to stay in the industry once you get there. But yeah, so he offered me the job, and I said sure, absolutely, and then I guess the rest has been history. So thank you, Mark, for bringing me back in.
And then I'll have a little tail end to that of now that you've learned about Dark Castle and what it is and such. Does it give you a different perspective having worked with Mark? So it's like, oh, this person I worked with, created this like fantastic old thing that I never knew about.
Yeah, so the thing is, at VC, Mark was the executive producer on the project. So, he's, at least from the QA perspective, like he's on like the upper echelon of like in the company, like you have like, the pecking order, like he was already up high. But out of all of the higher ups, he was always the most personable. He was in the office the most, like, QA was always in the office, like working, testing the game away. And he'd have his office, he'd be like the one producer in the office with us. And he was always just really personable. So, when I heard that he, had this huge history behind him of, starting these franchises and, all of the work that he's done, I wasn't really surprised. I figured there was, a big wave following behind him, just seeing how he worked and whatnot. So
absolutely. Well, you're also going to get the question of what growing up, like what you consider old or classic games. What was your favorite classic game?
I always think about this because it's kind of hard to pick. I was huge into Pokemon growing up. I'm not as big into it anymore as I was before, but I still love the game, love the series. But I feel like one that I don't really hear a lot of people talk about is Monster Rancher. I don't know if anyone has played Monster Rancher, but basically the whole premise was it was so cool to me because there's like this whole catalog of monsters, and in order to get new monsters for you to train and then grow and then fight other monsters with, was that you had to put in CDs of other games you had, and then it'd read the data off the CD and then give you a monster based on the data on the CD. Nice. So It was an old PS1 game, so I'd like put in Metal Gear Solid and give me like a special version of this monster that was like related to Metal Gear Solid or things like that. I just remember the concept was so foreign and fascinating to me that it was just a game. Even today, I go back and I'll plug in my PS1 and I'll play it again and just to feel nostalgia. Although they did remaster or re-release it on Steam, kind of like what we're doing with Return to Dark Castle. So, but there's something about playing the original that's it just hits home. But yeah, Monster Rancher is really big. And then as far as just games that I stick with to this day, still, I've always been a big shooter guy. So the Call of Duty, Halo, Gears of War trio are always, ones I go back to. But Call of Duty is probably the game I've played the most throughout my life. Just every year, I'm one of the sheep that come back and buy the new $70 Call of Duty game. That's the same thing again, but I just can't get enough of it. I don't know. There must be something wrong in my head or something. Because
if you're enjoying yourself,
I'm guilty of that for about 10 years, and then I fell off the bandwagon.
I'm still here. My hands are still first person shootered up. Yeah, I've got my cool controller with the paddles on the back, so I can all sorts of stuff. But it's Call of Duty's all been really fun, and I guess recently, at least as of yesterday, Marathon. I kind of got into extraction shooters probably, I don't know, 5-ish years ago with Escape from Tarkov, and I've kind of tried to keep one extraction shooter in my play pool, whether it be Marauders or The Cycle, which unfortunately is no longer available, and then more recently Arena Breakout. But yeah, so I'm always trying to play different games. I have the issue of I have a Steam library of like 1,000 games and I've played about 100 of them, so I'm going to be constantly battling that for the rest of my life, probably trying to catch up to the purchase. The spending is not really meeting the play hours, because I remember hearing this quote a while back, but they say once you start developing games, you no longer get to play games, and I definitely feel that. So you definitely get a lot less time because when you develop a game that you really enjoy and you're like a part of the development team of a game you really enjoy, you want to put your extra time into it. So you have 3 hours of free time in the evening. It's like I could go play another game, or I could go back and work on the game I'm working on, because it doesn't really feel like work if you're really enjoying it. So
yeah, I hear that.
That's true.
Yeah, don't ask me how many hours I was working to get that Myth remaster finished at the end there, because I had my own deadline, and by the end I was probably working like 60 hours a week to just get it over the finish line before that deadline. So, but
it's a weird connection between work and just free, like just enjoyment and work, because there's something about it. I don't know, like when you have a project and you have like a to-do list that you need to get done, but it doesn't feel like a chore to get it done. It's really hard to not dump your time into it. So
yeah, I think I described working on video games as the most difficult job that you could have, that is also the most fun job that you could have.
That's
yeah.
true.
All right.
Absolutely.
Well, a lot of people are here for Dark Castle questions, so I was going to start getting through these as quick as can. Mark, here's one. When you were making the original Dark Castle games, was there anything that you really wanted to get in that you did not get in?
No. The game really came together quickly. I think I've spoken before about how they flew me to San Diego one day, and then I met with John and Eric and Charlie and Haley, his wife, who ran the company. And I pitched the game. They wanted to do a horror game, and I said, no, let's do a medieval game. And on a whiteboard, not a whiteboard, but a flip chart, I kind of mapped out a bunch of rooms, which are kind of copies of whatever popular games were, whether it was Donkey Kong with the barrels and all that kind of stuff, but changed it up a little bit. And then once we started working on it, I just basically started having the guy run around. It's kind of what I'm doing now with the new game I'm working on, is just have him run around and navigate and then think of things for him to do. And I wanted to keep it simple. There's very few elements. There's, ladders, there's ropes and all that kind of stuff. And so there was never like a master game design document or anything. I would just work on some animations, give them to John, imagine a room, have, 4 or 5 puzzle elements in a room, and tell John to put it together, and he'd send me back a disc and we'd try it out. And if it worked, we went on and did it. So there was really nothing left out on it, because there was never really a master plan to do it. It was very freeform. I think we did it within like 6 to 9 months on the first one. And then the second one is when we went back, with Beyond, and came up with the scrolling levels and the catacombs and stuff like that. So no, there's nothing really left out from either of them because there was never really a master plan. So,
Oh, good to know.
Okay, I have a follow-up question on that.
Yeah.
A couple of months ago, I saw a screenshot from Beyond Dark Castle that had garlic as a pickup item, and it blew my mind because I'd never seen this image before. Like, what was the deal with that?
Well, garlic it could prevent you from getting bit by bats, right?
I guess it was supposed to be, but it doesn't exist in the game. It was something that was just in a screenshot or like.
I don't know. Maybe we never made it in the game.
Yeah.
What's on the instruction screen? Is it on the instruction screen?
I'm not sure. No, I don't think it's on the instruction screen, but it was in some sort of like, maybe it was something that you shared with me that it looked like a screenshot from the game, but it must have been some little item that had been cut.
Yeah, no, I had done garlic. It was, the same, it would protect you against bats, but I can't, it was 40 years ago. I can't remember what
I think there might have been some little documentation in there that that sort of implied that it was like a smart bomb where you touch it, it would like wipe out all the bats on the screen or something like that. But
it could be.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I can't remember. So
good.
many 80 games ago. Yeah.
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 You sort of touched on this, but what was the design process for designing a level back then? You kind of mentioned that you would just draw a room and but was there any iteration, or was it kind of just first pass, let's go?
Yeah, I mean, I got the guy running and jumping, and then I knew how tall he was and how far his jump was. Everything was very precise, and then I just made tricks. I'd come up with things, and I'd put a screen together. I mean, that's all the backgrounds were, is a screen, a 2D bitmap, and I'd send them off to Jonathan, and he'd put floors in or whatever, and then I'd try them out. And it all went very smoothly. I mean, the game is so simple. I mean, you got to avoid the rats, you got to avoid the bats, you got to jump this far, don't look out, don't trip, all that kind of stuff. And it was just really putting those little pieces together in a way that was interesting and challenging. And I would put the levels together and send John the pictures via mail. And halfway through the project, FedEx happened, and so we could do it overnight, which was really cool. And just piece them together. Was all it was really to it. And then John would play it, or put it together, and I'd play it, and if it went well, we kept it.
Perfect. Well then, among the levels for those first two games, what was the one that like you were the most proud of? How it came together, or how it looked, or however you want to define that?
Yeah, pretty much. I know I like the whole game throughout. Some of the scenes I really like I like the startup screen where the water's shimmering. It's a small little thing, but I mean, I took joy in that kind of thing. Some of the animations. I love the when the guy gets caught on the pendulum and it's swung back and forth.
Yeah.
The visual jokes like that. That's what kind of really interested me, and that's the thing I'm doing now in the new game is I'm going to really amp up the kind of the abusive slapstick. Because I think those moments are the moments that people like. One of the things we feature in the trailer now from Zack's game is when he raises his head and bumps his head, and then pounds on the floor. I think all those little comic breaks, I have the guy now with the guard getting shot, and he's going to get pinned to the wall with the crossbow. Those are the things I kind of took joy in, and having those work. And it's just always, it's fun to me. I mean, I was just doing it all day today. I'm working on the rats in the new game right now, and I came up with different ways you could get bit and stuff like this. And for me, that's the fun. I mean, it's really amazing you guys enjoy playing it and everything. But I love coming up with those things and then seeing if those things make people laugh. It's kind of like being a stand-up comic or something and wanting to come up with things you get responses to, from the audience.
Yeah, you came up with a bit that's lasted over 40 years, so you got to be pretty good.
Well, the thing too that I realize too now is, Eric sounds really. I mean, that's the thing most people come up to me about with Dark Castle is they make the different noises that whatever it is that they like in the game, and it really, those two things, I think the sounds reinforce the wacky slapstick stuff. And that kind of, nailed it in your head. And those are the kind of the high points in the game, when you hear something, you've achieved something or you're in trouble or whatever it is. I think those very clear and distinctive cues of both visually and audioly at the same time really what makes people remind people of things, or really pay attention.
Well, that's going to have me step forward with some questions for a little bit, and I'll come right back. On the Philips CDI version of the game, it has the strange point of it that, unlike all the other different ports of Dark Castle over the years, for some reason they re-recorded all of the audio. And I was wondering if you had any idea what the story about that was.
I can't remember, but I was loosely involved, right after, well, first I finished Dark Castle, and then we moved out to California from Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I started working on, well, I think I started Beyond in Chicago, and then when we moved to San Francisco, I finished Beyond. And before I even finished Beyond, I got the job at Atari. So I was still working at night at home, doing animations and stuff for Beyond. And then somewhere in there, the Philips CDI thing came in, and I got involved with it to some degree, but it was a real mess because, the technology was not that good. It was slow. Everybody was all mystified by CD-ROMs, which, basically slow memory.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't good. And then the controllers were bad. So I didn't get that much involved with any of the ports. I was more excited. I went on and did Road Blasters, which, was cooler to me. I was all excited working on, Atari games, doing real coin-op games. That, I'd kind of gotten to that next level, and I kind of didn't pay attention to what Charlie was doing with all the ports and Tom Frisina 360 and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's really,
so I was not that involved. I remember that the CDI version just never felt good, looked good, or was not making good progress throughout the whole thing.
Yeah, this year I went through an emulator and I played through the whole CDI one so I could get pictures for the wiki of all of the levels. And it's weird because all the levels scroll even though it's the first Dark Castle game. So for some reason the camera is just way zoomed in, which means you can die from things off screen much easier and such. A lot of very odd choices. It has that very CDI texture look to it of what looks like the clip art from that era that they would just use on all the CDI games and such. But really the thing that stood out to me was it's so strange to hear all these sounds, but they're not quite right. It's somebody doing impressions of the original sounds, but they're not the original sounds. And so my brain is going
How weird.
I get it, but I also wonder what the story was there. So maybe I can track
down
somebody that worked on it.
It was a different time. When I started in video games in the late, well, actually, in 79, 80, somewhere in there, there were probably only 5,000 people on Earth making video games. And then by the end of the 80s, there's a whole bunch of new people in it, but not everybody was really qualified to be in games. And there hadn't been a lot of cycles of companies learning how to make games and how to port games. And so it was real early, and there was a lot of crap came up. Plus, the systems were all challenged as well, right? I mean, it was a kind of a rough time, and it wasn't really until the early '90s, I think, when things started kind of getting in shape, and companies learned how to do nice ports or faithful ports of things. So I think the late '80s, early '90s, there were a kind of a growing pains time, and also there were all those different technologies like CDI, and then Trip Hawkins came up with 3DO and all these kind of half-breed solutions that really weren't that great. I mean, we tried doing a CDI game at Atari on Beavis and Butthead, and the technology was just so poor we had to kill the project. And it was a tough time. So the CDI was just one of those weird things that came up, and I didn't
and
pay
went.
attention, really. Yes, yeah.
All right, well, let's keep it.
Everybody was enamored. All the big companies like Philips was enamored. They saw what Nintendo did, and they saw what Atari did with the consoles, and they wanted to be the next home console. It wasn't until it settled on a triumvirate of Sega and Nintendo and Sony to dominate in that space and kind of calm things down. It was still kind of a wild west out there with a lot of goofy ideas.
Will do. So I'll shoot through a few really quickly, but Mark, do you have any specific vivid memories while working on either of the first two Dark Castle games? Like any one moment where you're just like, oh, you remember that specific day or night that you're working on it or whatever?
Yeah, there's a number of times I have memories of, first off, for those of you who are old enough to remember when Mac 128 came out, I mean, it was just fucking amazing. I mean, you never saw anything like it. I mean, you had fonts, which I mean, it seems silly now, but the fact you could do different fonts was just incredible, and you could make the fonts bigger and smaller. And this resulted in a bunch of horrible looking documents with way too many fonts in it. But there was that, and then there was a whole desktop publishing thing that happened. But just the fact that we made VideoWorks, and I could sit there and animate all day long. So I have a lot of memories of, I lived at Lake Point Tower then, looking over Lake Michigan, and I worked from home back then. It wasn't, there wasn't a company. It was just me with my Mac, and then John with his Mac on the West Coast. So I have a lot of memories of just coming up with the animations, and I'd work all day, and then we go out at night and party, and then come back and work the next day. And just like now, I just love doing the stuff, looking zoomed in, super big, pixels really big on the screen, and just, changing them back then just from black to white, and putting that all together, and, getting the jump to work. And then once the jump looked good, getting the jump in the game. And then once the jump was in the game, finding ways to use the jump. And so I remember a lot of the moments of coming up with all that. And also I remember too, in San Francisco, finishing up Beyond Dark Castle 2, again, just with my Mac. Which, another point I think I've made to some other people, it's really interesting. Since I'm back now, I did production for about 30 years, and now I'm back on the creative side. And the one big difference is, back in the day, there was no internet. Well, there was ARPANET, but whatever. No one had internet. And there were no notifications. There was no cell phones. And so the Mac 128 was just this tool, and you would be 100% focused on what you were doing. You wouldn't get distracted. And now, as I'm trying to work, there's Slack messages popping up, there's email popping up. I'm typing an email message while I'm finishing up an animation. It's a very distracted place. And I really do look back and remember those days when it was kind of this sweeter little thing where you just had this isolated tool that could do amazing animations and just focus on that, not have all the other distractions in the world. So yeah, I have fond memories of making the games.
Here's a quick yes/no question. Back in the day, were you able to beat the 2 original games on Advanced?
Oh yeah, I played both. I played both those games through all the way. I mean, I think Eric Zocker was the other part of QA. I was just talking to him about that. He got sick of playing it, both of them. But I mean, I had to test and play the games. I was always really heavily involved all the way up through until I got to be VP and stuff. Even as VP, I'd play games a lot, but you have to play the game that you're making. You just have to. So yeah, I did play it all the way through on all different levels.
Cool.
And for some reason, it didn't seem as hard back then as it seems now for me.
I mean, isn't that always true? Like, as a kid, you fall down off your bike, and you're like, oh, that's just no big deal. And like, as an adult, you think about that, and you're like, oh my gosh, I'd be in the hospital, and like, it's like when you're younger, everything is so much easier.
Yeah.
All right, so let's see here. This is another probably a quick one. I assume the answer to this is no, but I always wondered, because you went from Beyond Dark Castle straight into Atari, but was there ever any space allotted in your head for what a third Dark Castle could have been back then, or no?
No, not really. I mean, it came up later when I bought the rights back in the early 2000s from Delta Tau. That's when I started thinking, and that's when we tried to do something with mobile. I did a bunch of I commissioned a bunch of the studies. We looked at a Dark Castle comic as a lead-in, and then also tried to do Dark Castle 3. Not tried to. We did a bunch of game design
prototypes.
Documents. Dark Castle 3D. No, we didn't get as far as prototypes.
Okay.
And so I didn't really start thinking about more Dark Castle until the early 2000s. Because I was very proud of it always. It's a really nice game, and it was such a personal work with just me and John on it, and Eric. So I didn't really think about it because I moved on to the Atari games, which I got very excited about, whether it was Flax or Pit Fighter, which that's where my head was at. But when I came back in the early 2000s, I started doing it. And then Zack came along with his game. I don't know when I first heard about it, probably 2006 or 7 or something like that. And so that was the focus then, is to get that one out. And then after I closed my company down and went to Visual Concepts for about 3 or 4 years, and then I started thinking about what I wanted to do at the end of my career here. And I decided I want to go back and do revisit Dark Castle and explore all the things of what did I learn since the beginning of being in the business? What have I learned since as a businessman? And what can I bring to it to make, what would be basically my magnum opus? And then, again, Zach showed up again, and he had returned to Dark Castle on Unity. So I said, great. And then now we're working to try to see if we can re-release the 2 originals. Hopefully we can get that done. Get the 2 originals out by summer, hopefully, if that goes well.
Hey, fingers crossed.
Yeah, and then now get the I'll do the Dark Castle 4 or whatever it's going to be called. So that's the only time I ever really thought about doing more Dark Castle was probably in the early 2000s when I had my own company and had the rights back.
Okay. I'll say I have a statement here, less than a question. Years and years ago, I talked to Jordan Mechner on Twitter or something, and I asked him about if he was at all inspired by Dark Castle when he was working on Prince of Persia, and he said no. So that settles that. But I was like, oh, okay. He thought that Dark Castle had come out after Prince of Persia when I asked him, so no.
I don't know. I don't know the story there. That's such a long time ago. I'm not going to debate anything there.
Yeah,
I might have heard that from the GoMart guys or something. I don't know. Somewhere along the way.
Yeah, I just had heard you mention that, so I thought I would clear that up because I also had that question. So, all right.
That's good to know.
Zach, did you play Beyond Dark Castle or Dark Castle originally?
I started with the first one, the original one. Yeah. Yeah, we got those games. Boy, I don't know. It's memory's hazy for all the way back then, but I don't know. Maybe a year or 2 apart, I guess. Probably when they came out. When did they come out? Like 87,
86,
89, 87, yeah.
86 and 87, yeah. So probably about right after they came out. But yeah, I definitely started with the original one, and then played that for a while, and then it's like, wow, there's another one, and I still haven't even gotten to the first one yet.
And then out of those original 2 games, which one did you like more, and just give a reason?
Oh, geez. That's such a hard. Such a hard thing to try to pin down, and it's like I love Super Mario Brothers 1 and 2 for very different reasons. They're very different games, but 2 is more dreamlike, and 1 is just more focus. And it's like I have fond memories of the first time I saw a scrolling level in Beyond Dark Castle. I was like, oh my god, that didn't even cross my mind that this room that I'm playing in could be longer than what I'm being presented, and the first one. Yeah, I don't know. It's a hard thing to answer. I'd have to probably go with the original because that was the first one I saw, and that's what got me excited about it, I guess.
That's fair.
Yeah.
All right. What was your favorite level from the original 2?
Boy, that's so hard to pick, but it's like the ones that jump out in my memory, I think, are probably Fireball 3, just because it's the split screen where you got the river running in there, and it was so hard to do, but it's also it really felt just dark and scary. Like you would get there, and it was so hard to finally get to that room, and then it's just like, this is impossible. Like, how am I supposed to get, and at that time, it's like, I didn't even know that the shield was a thing. It's like, I'm sitting here looking at this going, somehow I have to figure out how to jump past these boulders. And it's just like the boulders are pounding and the water is roaring. And it's just that room to me just felt big and just like intimidating, scary.
There you go. All right, Nick, I got some questions for you. So, having played them for the first time somewhat recently, or I assume that you've tried playing the original ones, which one have you enjoyed more?
Well, to answer that for you, the first part of it, I still have yet to play any of the first 3 games. So my first and only experience playing Return to Dark Castle is the one that's coming out next week. So I definitely should go. I never even owned a Mac, so I never even had an opportunity until now to. Well, I guess I could have. I'm sure there's emulators or whatnot, or all sorts of ports and things I could have checked. But yeah, this is my one and only experience playing the game. But favorite level, was that the question?
Which is the favorite out of the ones that you had seen? Like, which one spoke to you the most?
Out of the games, or just the levels in general?
The games, since I felt like you probably don't have enough time to kind of get used to all the levels like we did.
Yeah, so there's something about when I was watching gameplay of the very first one. I remember seeing it and just like I think it was like a 20-minute gameplay video or something. And he was able to go through the entire game and beat it. And there's something about like the straight black and white and pixel art that is it's so charming, I guess is the word I'd want to put for it. So if I had to pick one, I'm always a sucker for the originals, so I'd say the first one.
Curious Tiger is asking if it was one of Richard's videos.
I would have to go back and check what the channel name was. It might have been. I remember just looking up, Dark Castle gameplay on YouTube, and I found someone playing it. So it could have been. It might have been. I'm not sure. I'd have to double check.
Yeah. For context, Richard is probably the best Dark Castle player that exists. He's the one that beat. He's beaten the first game. If you beat it on advanced, every time it'll basically new game plus over and over again. And after a certain amount, it will stop giving you lives and such. And so he did a challenge where he did that. He's also beaten the game using, I think, 4 rocks to get to the end of the game. He's done it without done insane challenges and like to the point that nobody else was able to keep up with him. So, and he is in the chat right now. He's watching us. So, shout out!
I do. I remember seeing. I don't know where he ended up posting it, but it was when we were talking about whether or not the timing of the fire on Gauntlet was the same as it was in the originals. Because he was showing, he's like, "Oh yeah, I used to like jump back and forth 20 times and then go through the level." I'm like, I'm happy if I just make the jump. So yeah, I had a hint from that moment. I'm like, he must be very good at the game, and it seems like he's the guy.
All right, I've got some post-original game questions. Mark, let's settle the score. What is the official canon colors for the hero? Because every port seemed to have a different idea of what color clothes he was wearing.
Yeah, I was not involved with any of those ports, like I said, so that was not a decision I made. I did in black and white, and that was it. Yeah, so that was all whoever worked on the ports.
Yeah, Curious Tiger. His color's black and white.
Yeah.
That's what I did when I played Return to Dark Castle. I think the second time when I was playing it through, I just made my hero black and white to match the original sprites, and I was like, "Yeah, good enough. Let's go." But yeah, it's interesting seeing the different colorations, like from the box arts to the manuals to the different in-game things. Like I think different hair colors.
Not like Mario, where it's like red hat and suit.
Yeah. All right. Well, the official answer is there is no official answer. Let's go. Did you ever play Color Dark Castle, Mark?
No, I did not. I never played it. And I'd still like to do that someday. I saw it. Joe Williams reached out to me. I saw it at the time, but again, I was like deep into my world at Atari there, working hard on whatever game I was working on. So I never run back and look at it.
Yeah.
So Color Dark Castle is the reason that Return to Dark Castle exists. I mean, that's what inspired me to want to make. Basically, I started out with the idea of like, it'd be really cool to colorize, Beyond Dark Castle at this point, and then that turned into the whole thing of like just trying to come up with ideas for a whole new game.
All right, let's see here.
Yeah, I'm struggling with color. Well, not struggling right now. I've for the new game, I've come up with just a kind of a basic set of colors, but I don't know what I'm going to do yet right now. I'm still interested in black and white too, or I haven't made the art direction decision yet. Right now, I'm just trying to get all of the navigation in, and we'll manipulate colors later. But it is. I look at the black and white one, and there's something very precious about it that is very nice. It's very appealing.
I'm totally there with you.
Yeah.
So another one. Water or lava for Fireball 2 and 3. So the Color Dark Castle, they switched the water out in 2 and 3 with lava.
Oh yeah.
There was a community thing where I remember years ago where we were discussing like which one is better and which one seems more on brand for it and such. And I think water. Yeah, no, I was gonna say I think Zach explained exactly why that works for Dark Castle. So, but I was just interested in hearing your opinion, Mark.
My vision was it was like underground caverns and water. Although all video games should have lava, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
It was just water was the intention. Yeah.
Perfect.
And it wouldn't really make sense if you're on a log and you're floating down this lava river. I think you'd burn up pretty quick.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, but I don't slight anybody who wants to put lava in a video game. I think that's totally legit. I mean, It gets back to when you're a kid and you're playing games and you're hopscotching over stuff, and you say, if you go there, you'll touch lava, you'll die. I mean,
yeah, didn't they make the logs like rock on that version? I'm trying to remember what it
I
looked
think
like.
so. I think so.
Yeah.
I will say that the art for Color Dark Castle is very pretty, but it does change the atmosphere of the game quite a bit.
For sure.
See here. Here's another one from Mark. Did you know for the Amiga version of Beyond Dark Castle, you had the training option where you could go to a level and just give yourself infinite lives to just train on it? In the Amiga version, they also let you, I think, right-click on the hero, and you could drag him around like a gargoyle and just move him to different places on the level while testing. And that was something exclusive to that version. Like, I had no idea until I saw it in a video, like, just recently. And I was like, oh yeah, I just thought it was... Yeah, I didn't know that. It was just a cool little thing. And then I guess...
A little bit I heard about that. I think Jeff Spangenberg started working on the Amiga port and then failed, and he went on to go start Retro Studios. But and then Mike Schwartz, I think, took over and did the Amiga version, because I ended up meeting Mike Schwartz later on, and he said, I worked on Dark Castle, and so that's all I knew about Mike, but talk with him about that. That's all I know about the Amiga version.
Well, speaking of that, I guess it's to anyone, but I know that Nick doesn't have an answer for this because it's relating to them, but how many of the ports did any of you try? I mean, there's a lot of them, so it's interesting.
Oh, yeah, I don't know. I don't think I've tried any except just I think just Color Dark Castle. I mean, I'm aware of all these other ones that have existed, but it's like I looked at them and I just thought, I don't know. I prefer the memory that I have of the original games that I played, and I just didn't want to like muddy it with all these other kind of like looks and feels, and especially in terms of play control. Just watching videos of people playing through and they just like looked really choppy and clunky, and I thought, nah, I'm just gonna stick with the classic.
Yeah, I never played any of them. I mean, I saw them and I was just disgusted. But I don't know what the first ones were, but they were just so. I just couldn't even look at them, and I never played. Dark Cat, the color version looked okay, but I was busy with other stuff. And then it wasn't until Zach's game that I played his game, which is a faithful representation of Dark Castle as far as I'm concerned, in terms of the play mechanic and everything in there is spot on. So that's really the only other one I played besides the first.
We have Richard in the chat. He said, who signed off on the PC port with the amazing time-stopping sounds? If I remember correctly, when a sound was triggered, it would like just very briefly freeze the game.
I don't remember that stuff. I mean, that was a landscape back then. I mean, in the late 80s, early 90s, these devices were not capable of doing much. And unless you're a really skilled programmer or an engineer, you couldn't get the performance you needed out of them. And most of the people were not that good. And so they get paid to do these ports that were just substandard. And that happened a lot, not just with Dark Castle, with this games across the board generally sucked. A lot of them, the home games, which is why I was so excited about being in the arcade, because we had dedicated hardware and some of the best engineers working with us. And that was the exciting part, is you could have really fast, responsive stuff that you just couldn't get at home.
All right, Zach, I got a quick one for you. What were your thoughts on Color Dark Castle? Because obviously that's what led to Return to Dark Castle, but I've never actually heard your direct thoughts on the overall Color Dark Castle.
Honest opinion, it's the color palette for me is just, it's not what I imagined. Like when I first heard about it, I was like really excited, and I saw it, and yeah, it's my first takeaway is like, oh, this is, I don't know, it was such a different vibe than I'm not even sure what I was expecting it to look like, but it just somehow wasn't that. But I did warm up to it, obviously, and played it, and it was really neat just having that classic game that I had such a fond memory of in this this new kind of shiny presentation. But yeah, I don't know. I guess that's about it.
All right, and then did you were talking with Delta Tau. Do you know if they ever got any work done on a Color Beyond Dark Castle? Because I know it didn't get very far. But I was just curious if you ever heard if there was any work done on it.
No, I'm not aware of anything. They never mentioned anything about it when I talked to them.
Yeah, they mentioned, because in the manual they say they'd like to make it, and then I think in like an FAQ somewhere interview, he mentioned that it was canceled due to low sales, but I had no idea if it was even in production or if it was just an idea. Okay.
Yeah,
well,
that's more than I knew about it.
Yep. And then did you ever get to try out Super Happy Fun Fun's Dark Castle Mobile, Zach?
I didn't. No, I remember the screenshots of it. I remember looking around but I don't think I ever played it.
I don't think we ever released it. Was it ever released, or it was released maybe on just a few phones?
It was released because a few community members did get a chance to play it. I, at the time, did not have a phone that could run it, and so I was not able to get it. And I've always wanted to try it. I visually documented what I could from all of the screenshots I had in my archives and the trailer and stuff, but there's some levels I just don't even know what they look like. So if you ever find a version of...
it was horrible. First off, it was, back with low-res phones. And in fact, now that I think about it, I think we just did QSIF, which was the larger format phones, which not everybody had. So, this was, and it was obviously, the controls are so precise on Dark Castle, it was never going to be a phone game. But we did our best to try to make it happen. And I still have all the art and everything. But yeah, we did that with Bondi. They distributed it, but I think it was only on a handful of high-end phones. So, it didn't do that well.
Yeah, but that reminds me, actually, now that I think about it, the hero has colors in that version. So is that technically the first canon colorized Duncan or the hero?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we did. We did the art at Super Happy. In fact, Billy, who's been helping us out with some of the promotional videos with Zach and him are working together to get us all the promotional videos and the ads and stuff, the static ads. Billy was the guy who did that art in that game. So
cool.
And I was involved with that. And I was looking at some of the screens. I think the colors are okay. Certainly better than some of the other ports I saw. It was so challenged, though. I mean, I forget what QSIF was. Was it 280 by, I don't know, 170 or something like that?
I don't know.
Yeah, it's it's like a postage stamp. And it's really cool. I mean, the character, as far as pixel art goes, I think the character is like 8 pixels high or something like that. So, it's extreme. It's very extreme.
Well, if you ever find a copy of that, I would love to get screenshots of all the levels just to have it visually documented. But
I have all the archives. I have all the archives of Super Happy. It's just a question of digging through. We did about 70 games there. Mobile games. We did probably 60 mobile games, and so I have all these folders with all that stuff in it. So they're somewhere in the cloud somewhere. I've got to go digging. In fact, I was just
archives are always that way, right?
Yeah.
All right, let's see here. So moving on to Return to Dark Castle. Mark, how would you feel about making a small level pack for Return to Dark Castle?
I have to, I would like to do that, I guess. However, I'm like on the next game. I mean, I was working on what we're calling DC4, DC Revenant, whatever you want to call it. When Zach, I had started last January, on in December, January, and then Ben, who's the engineer, joined me in April, and then I forget Zach. I don't know, we got in touch. I reached out to Zach to see if he wanted to work with me on the new game, and he said, "Oh, I have it in Unity now," and so that's that. So right now, I'm rather than editing levels for Return to Dark Castle. Although once the level editor comes out, I'll definitely play with that and probably come up with a few things.
For sure.
I'll do that, but right now, no. I'm still just trying to get all the basic navigation in on the new character. But no, that's probably when it'll happen. I haven't even thought about it, but now that you mentioned it, with the level editor coming out, I'm sure I'll definitely do some levels for sure. That'll be fun.
Hey,
I'm really looking forward to the level editor coming out and getting some user generated content going. We've talked about that in the channel here a little bit. And I think that's something that could give the game real legs. And I know Zach is going to be working on that to get that out as soon as possible. And then, whether or not we can do a creators hub or whatever you want to call it, UGC hub, that would be really cool if it could be in the game so everybody could do it easily. That'd be ideal. So I'll do some levels there for sure.
Oh,
but
man.
No, I haven't thought about it before now.
And how does that make you feel, Zach?
What's up?
I was gonna say, like, if Mark's making custom levels in Return to Dark Castle, that was pretty surreal.
Yeah, that'd be really cool. Yeah, it's the level editor is going to be exciting. I mean, there's definitely, it was one of those things that, like, I was glad to get it out when we did, back in 2008, 9, 10, whenever it came out. But it never like really, reached the potential that I wanted it to be. It was always just sort of like a developer's tool that I kind of like mashed into this mold to try to make it like more user friendly. But this time around, I'm really thinking, from the ground up, designing it to be integrated into the game. That actually, ironically, that's how it started out. It started out as being part of, the Return to Our Castle as I was making it, and I decided to separate it out, just for various reasons. But this time around, it's going to be integrated. It's going to be designed to work, with a controller from day one, so that it can be used on Steam Deck and all that stuff. So I've already started thinking of ideas to make it more user friendly, better documentation, all the things. So it should be really exciting.
All right. Here's a fun one, Mark. What was your favorite touch in Return to Our Castle that you wish you had thought of?
Well, I think there's a lot of stuff that. No, I think there's a lot of stuff Zach put in there. I mean, he introduced new characters, just the levels with the trees and stuff. I like that. He just did an excellent job, I think, of extending. He nailed the first two games in terms of how they play, 100%, and then all the new stuff he created is very faithful to the intent and the play mechanic and everything. So, a lot of stuff. Yeah.
And then, do you have a favorite level from Return to Our Castle, Mark?
No, I haven't. I haven't played it a lot this time. I played it a lot more back in 2008. No, I mean, there's so many levels in there. They're all just interesting puzzles, to solve. And it's fun to go into a new level and just figure out what the 3 or 4 things you have to do are to get out of it, and then you move on to the next one. So nothing really pops out in my mind right now. No.
Zach, how would you feel about making a custom level set once this level editor's out?
I did actually start on one, like back in the day. I found the old files as I was going through, collecting data and stuff when I started working on this port, and it like brought back these memories of sitting down and starting to work on it. I had 4 or 5 rooms put together and was trying to come up with a theme for it, and it just ended up. I don't remember why I never ended up finishing it. I think we just kind of got burned out on trying to get the project onto Windows and all that stuff. But I would definitely love to really put some thought into making a true like expansion to the game, and even introduce some new stuff besides just rooms, but like some new mechanics or characters or something. I don't know. Haven't really talked to Mark about how that might work yet, but it's certainly not off the table.
Hey, that's exciting as heck. But all right, what's one of the user created levels you do remember, Zach?
I didn't get to see a lot of them. I mean, it's been years and years since I looked at them. I mean, some of the stuff that you did, I thought was really interesting, and I haven't even honestly gotten a chance to play through those yet. I just saw some of the screenshots that you shared with me, and they look really cool. But yeah, I don't know. I just sort of fell off the map after that point because I ended up getting into other things, and I'm ashamed to say that I really didn't go back and play a lot of the user generated content. And I should have. I'm hoping to get to it this time around. They'll all still work. I mean, should be able to just drop in any of those packs into the new 2026 release and have it work. So
perfect.
It'll be fun to look through them.
I think it'd be cool if we can, we haven't had a chance to talk about it a lot yet, but I think it'd be really cool if somehow through some voting or something, first off, hopefully enough people make levels that it's actually worth talking about. So we'll have to see if that happens. But then hopefully voting, that maybe the top voted ones could somehow get incorporated back into the game, or be an area you could go into and play the best rated ones or something like that. Some kind of construct like that would seem kind of interesting to me, to be able to expose the best of the best, rather than having to go through 500 levels people created to find the good ones. To be able to highlight the good ones would be really, I think, a useful thing.
Yeah. All right, let's see here. Zach, what was the Return to Our Castle level you were the most proud of at the end of the project?
Oh, geez. I mean, I can think of a couple of them. I mean, I loved the Gauntlet. I mean, the Gauntlet was so fun to just like you know, you finally get to the last like stages of the game, and I wanted to make something that just like, you know, again, that just like scared people, where you jump in and just like there's just chaos. You know, there's the music is pounding and like these things slamming down on the screen. It's like that was so fun to me to just, you know, have people be surprised by that, I think. Um, I One of my levels that I was most proud of, just artistically, I think, is the Tangled Roots level, and I still have in my notebook like this little sketch of a single screen room of this like great big tree that was tipped over the same angle of the stairs. You could walk up it, and that, you know, became obviously the level that I put in there, and I love the feel of it, like being in autumn with the leaves falling and, you know, crawling around underneath little caverns with the roots and stuff. It just had a nice feel to it. So I guess I'd have to pick that one.
That's
That
a
is a nice
great
one.
pick, honestly.
Yeah, 100%.
So here's the one I've sort of poked you about over the years, but I'll ask it again properly here. So over the years, many things changed over the development of Return to Dark Castle. I mean, that's very obvious. That's how game development works. You're not like, here's what we're gonna do. Let's get it done. All right, it's done. It's like,
Yeah.
here's what we're gonna do. Maybe this will be better. Let's cut this part. We could fix
Right.
this. And so by the time you get to the end, it looks like something totally different. But because of its interesting development cycle, there's a lot of screenshots and different betas and demos and stuff that had different levels from what would end up in the final game. And I was curious if you had kind of record of some of these levels that just didn't make the cut or just changed so dramatically, like, because a lot of them were, but
Yeah, I think a lot of the levels that you're probably referring to were really just tests. It's like the, I started from the very beginning with a level editor that was sort of adapted from some other games that I was working on at the time, and so the ability to just take your mouse and just draw out like floors and ladders and stuff, like, oh, this is interesting, I'll just try playing this. And so a lot of those like ended up in the I don't remember what they were called, like the teaser or whatever, and then, you know, some random screenshots that showed up on the web, and some of them got reincorporated where it's like maybe it was a level that was done with trees and wood, and it ended up being the same level but in a castle, and, you know, things like that sort of changed. But a lot of it was honestly just experimentation, just playing around with different layouts and things and trying to find stuff that I would like. And in the end, I would look at a level and go, that was kind of neat, but it doesn't really have any, you know, structure that makes sense inside this castle. That, you know, it was just sort of some random things that were put together. So a lot of that stuff just got changed or cut.
yeah, that makes sense. It was really fascinating, you know, as a fan, watching the levels change over time. Like the original library that they had in one of the demos had a blue and white iMac, and then as time went on, that iMac changed into one of the ones that had the floating screen and stuff like that. And you could see over the time how it changed the layout of the level and what you would see in it. And you know,
yeah, it had to stay current. I couldn't release it with the blue and white one when that wasn't the current iMac at the time.
Well, you know, I mean, I don't know if you knew. I mean, I assume you did. I made it was the Forgotten levels, I believe, which is I recreated pixel for pixel all of the pre-release levels and everything that showed up in screenshots, but not in the final game.
Yeah,
set for Return to the Castle, so everybody could experience it. Because, you know, at that point in time, we were already deep into OS X, and so getting some of these old ones to even run was not a thing that happened anymore. And so, like, I just was like, as we went, I documented everything, so I had an archive ready for when the level editor came out to make this project. And I just thought, I got to preserve this
yeah,
because,
that's cool.
Yeah,
I'd love to go back and drop those into the new version and actually play through them.
All right, we've got. Let's see here. I've been skipping over some of the cuts, some of the questions because they've been getting answered while reading some of these other ones. So, let's see, that one's basically been answered. Here's a quick spitball question, which is, Mark, if we lived in a perfect world, you had an infinite budget, and somebody was like, let's make a 3D Dark Castle game. How would you even how would you approach that even?
Oh, we seriously considered 3D Dark Castle for quite a while at Super Happy, and nothing ever really caught me. And also, I just think the soul of Dark Castle is really a 2D platformer, side view. And I even think, hand-drawn stuff is really important as well. Um, and so, I think the look of the game when it came out was so new. That's just an integral part of it. And I'm not saying I could never see a 3D game, but it's a different game. I mean, Dark Castle is really a side view puzzle game. And I thought about, redoing the game again. That's where I ended up back at now with what I'm doing now. The characters, instead of being 32 pixels tall or 240 pixels tall, but still relationship wise, the size of the character to the new modern screens is the same proportion as the original Dark Castle. And I think there was a magic we captured there. And I think that's kind of the mechanic of the game, is to kind of be proportional like that. And, we do have, the original Dark Castle had all the frozen, the single screen rooms, beyond obviously introduced scrolling. Zack does a lot of scrolling as well. That's all I'm doing for that as well. And I think if you try to start doing a 3D game, it's going to become something else, that Dark Castle isn't. And, it could have the brand, it could have the characters, but I really feel like Dark Castle is really that puzzle solving sideways, or, profile view game. So that's kind of how I see it.
Chat is agreeing with you, so it's like, all right, let's see here.
And that's when I'm working on a new game now. That's what the first thing I'm doing is getting all the navigation, the ladders, and all the rules about, if you fall here, you get dizzy. If you fall here, you die, ropes, swinging, all that kind of stuff. Get that basic stuff all working again in a proportional kind of way, same proportions to the original Mac screens, and then let the game tell me what it wants to be within that. It'll still be puzzles to solve. I think one of the things I have to think about is how to make it a little bit more approachable. We still want it to be tough and hard to play, but I'm just concerned with how casual games have come, the acceptance of the audience out there. But generally, Dark Castle needs to be a sideways scrolling 2D platform game in my mind. Very precise, with those known things, like you were talking at the beginning of this call, where you knew how far the jump was, and it's always that far, whether you do a standing jump or a running jump. And those kind of elements, changing those up, I think, in 3D, I don't know how that. It could be made to work out, but I'm not interested in that, honestly.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair, and I think that's I think that there's always the fun idea of changing one dimension to 2 dimension to 3 dimension and such, but you can see from a lot of games that tried to make the jump from 2D to 3D, it's hard, and so many that did lost something in translation, as it were. So I totally get you on that, but I just thought it was a fun idea to just think about, to just be like, this would be the thing to do.
It's
but
not stupid. I did it myself with my own company. We paid people to come up with things. We got a lot of neat ideas, but at the end of the day, now you just have another, game. And Dark Castle still, I think, is kind of unique in a lot of ways. There's similar games and stuff, but the complex puzzle, precise puzzle aspect of it is kind of a little niche that I enjoy exploring, and I think that's where I'd like to keep it.
Fair enough.
It's funny, you had mentioned to Zack in one of the previous questions, asking about if a VR Dark Castle was a thing, and a vision popped in my head of like just standing, like throwing rocks at like bats flying at you, and it sounded like fun. I just wanted to throw that out there for Zack if you had any ideas. We can talk.
I've almost started it. A couple of times I've sat down and it's like, man, I just throw something together real quick just to see what it would look like, because some of the mechanics would work really well. So.
All right, let's see here. I've got just a handful of questions left. Zack, did you ever think a new Dark Castle game was even possible before Mark reached back out to you? Like, for me, it was, a handful of months ago. It's suddenly like, oh, Dark Castle's back on the menu. What the heck? Okay. But I imagine it was earlier for you, but what kind of a feeling was that for you?
Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of like slowly sinking in over time, because as soon as that, I guess to answer the question, I had never really thought about it that much. I wasn't, sure if Mark or Jonathan had ever, considered like coming back and doing another game. So the only thought that kind of remained in my head is like, maybe someday I'll try to, talk with them and see if I could do another one at some point. But I hadn't given any like real serious thought. But then when Mark approached me, and at the same time, I came back and said, well, I've got the Return to Dark Castle working in Unity now too, and so it immediately transitioned into that. And so I've been following a little bit of what he's been working on, and as he's been sharing like animations and stuff, and it's exciting. But at the same time, it's like I'm just like so focused on trying to get this one done that I can't really get excited about playing another game or even being a part of it, like working on some level designs or something like that. But yeah, it's great. I can't wait to see what the project as it progresses more. It's gonna be really cool.
Yeah, I hear that. There's part of me that wants to be like, I want to be involved in any capacity, and there's a part of me like, oh, but then I can't quite be a fan if I'm busy being nosed down on it, and I have to keep going back and forth on it.
Sure.
Right. I hear that.
Yeah.
And just a quick, you can even just give a yes or no on this, Zach. Did you ever daydream about playing a 3D Dark Castle game back in the day?
Boy, yeah, sure. I mean, I'll answer it with a yes. It's sort of in the same realm as like the VR thing, where it's like when all these 3D games were coming out, and I started playing games like Turok and Mario 64 and stuff. It's like, yeah, I'm sure I've thought about having a Dark Castle character run and jump and shoot in 3 dimensions, but yeah, not to a serious extent.
No, but it's fun to imagine, especially in the age of where everything was going 3D. Be like, oh man. Yeah. I want to see the anteroom in 3D.
every game ever played in 2D has been thought of in a third dimension by somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
It just becomes it's definitely just fundamentally a different game. I mean, it's not even Dark Castle. I mean, you could have the brand, but it's not Dark Castle.
You could, but I mean, on the same hand, you look at something like Mario 64, and it's like it's different, but it sure does feel like Mario in the same sense that you're running and jumping on platforms and stomping on stuff. But it doesn't have that sort of tight precision the way that the 2D game has. So it's
I think they definitely Mario 60. That's a good example of, I think, probably the best you could hope for in terms of
that's as good as it's going to get.
Transposing into 3D and still have that joyful playfulness. You
yeah.
know. To get there, though, Nintendo's spent years and years and years, and they have competing teams coming up with different play mechanics to get to that point. I mean, it would be a huge product to find something, and they even delayed the release of their platform based on how good the game was. I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So those are very rarefied places to be in,
sure.
as far as game development goes.
So I've got let's see here, just a few questions left now. Mark or Zach, have you played Quagmire, Sammy the Cycle Bot, Lode Runner, or Oddworld? These were 4 games that I kind of compiled as all sharing some DNA with Dark Castle, and I was just wondering if either of you had played any of those games.
Yeah, the only one that I've seen Oddworld, but the only one I've actually played out of all those is Lode Runner, and that was another one of those games that we had the black and white version on the Mac, and it was another one that was like very inspiring, and it had a level editor, and you could, it was definitely an inspiration to become a game developer. But the other ones I'm not really familiar with that much.
I played Lode Runner.
I loved Oddworld.
Yeah,
I played Oddworld a little bit when it came out, amongst all the other games I played, but not, it wasn't like a major game for me. But Lode Runner I played quite a bit of, and I think definitely it affected me. The Pitfall Harry was another one. That's where the swinging ropes came from, and obviously Donkey Kong for the barrel rooms and stuff.
Yeah.
So those are kind of the games that are kind of like that, have elements in there from there.
Gotcha. Listing all those, I'll kind of give a rundown since not everyone's familiar with all of them. So Quagmire and Sammy the Cycle Bot seem to be same developer, same series, ? They were old Mac games, so 90s color Mac games, but they were very much like somebody went, I like Dark Castle. What if I made Dark Castle but made it a sci-fi thing with tile backgrounds and added momentum? And that's basically the only real difference is that.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know that they're like amazing, but I'd played them as when I was younger, but I never made that connection with somebody's like, oh yeah, it's just like a Dark Castle clone. And I was like, oh dang it, now I can't see that.
Interesting. I'll have to look at them.
Yeah.
I'm looking at it now.
Yeah, Oddworld had the same thing of it's a tile-based thing that you can jump a very specific amount. You don't directly attack people. It's kind of indirect, similar to Dark Castle, and they all have this sort of like indirect combat thing going. And so it was just a fun question.
Yeah, I remember you had asked, or we met a couple weeks ago when we talked. You had brought up Oddworld as a comparison, and it didn't dawn on me until you mentioned it. I'm like, it does have a lot of similarities, doesn't it? Like, just like the tile base, like is very similar. The indirect combat's very similar, and like you're just going like up and down platform as well. Yeah, I didn't really think about it until you mentioned it.
Yeah, I feel like I played an Oddworld like a demo or something, maybe on Xbox Arcade back in the day. It sounds vaguely familiar.
Well, the 3D Oddworlds were pretty different from the 2D ones. The 2D ones were way more like Dark Castle. I felt like that was one of those series that struggled when it hit 3D. So
the one that I'm thinking of was a 2D with maybe it had 3D graphics, but I'm definitely remembering like an Oddworld that was like a side scroller type thing.
So that would have been, I think they had a PC and PS1 in that era. Would have been.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, since this kind of ties in with Nick, I had a question for you, which is, now that you've kind of seen Dark Castle and such, is there any games you can now trace back the DNA to Dark Castle?
Oh man, I feel like none that haven't already been mentioned. Yeah, I feel like everything as far as like, because I mean, when I started playing games and everything, I feel like I had a few like side-scrolling kind of games. I guess recently, one game I played was Blasphemous. It's like a Metroidvania, but it's like the pixel art style and like the room-to-room combat. It felt like, I feel like ever since getting introduced to Dark Castle, that I think Blasphemous has been the most where I've been like, I feel like they must have played it at some point because it feels very similar.
It also has really pretty pixel art. Blasphemous is gorgeous.
Yeah, whenever I see, it's like probably one of my, in all of gaming, like the thing I enjoy the most is like when I see a pixel art animation that is just like extremely fluid. I see it's like it scratches something. I don't know what it is, but it's like it's so pretty to look at. Like I guess another not that it's a similar vein, but the recent Five Nights at Freddy's, the Into the Pit. They did the pixel art side scroller game. There were some of the animations in that. It's like, how is this pixel art? I can't even believe I'm looking at pixels moving. I don't know. I really enjoy very fluid pixel art.
Yeah, no, I hear you with that. I always love, my brother's a 2D animator, so I grew up watching a lot of 2D animation being done, and I have a huge soft spot for 2D animation. And so like whenever it's either pixel art or hand-drawn art, like when you see smooth animation, so good.
Yeah. Beautiful.
I've got 2 questions left here, and I'm going to shout out to chat. If you have any questions you want answered, now start flooding the chat with them. So, Mark, who is the youngest person that you've talked to who grew up with Dark Castle? Because I'm sure you've met some people that are like, oh yeah, Dark Castle.
Well, they're not young anymore.
Well, exactly.
It always amazed me. Obviously there's people my age who, like me, went off and got excited and bought a Mac and then played all the games on the Mac. And then, I was busy doing my Atari stuff, but then so often people come up to me and with memories of it, and they have memories of playing, not being the people, they're the children of the people who bought those Macs. And they remember sitting on the laps with their dad playing Dark Castle, and that's it. But then I think probably the biggest thing was one of my daughters was, I think, in first or second grade. And this was in the 2000s. Probably 2006 or so. And their teacher knew about Dark Castle and was impressed that, my kid's father did Dark Castle. And that was kind of a young, I guess, So I still get bumped into people who remember it from the 90s, kind of Gen X people probably, or who were probably kids, and they, their dad had an old Mac or something like that. So not directly, but knowing that they played it in the early 90s, sitting on their father's lap, that's probably the youngest I ever heard of. They have fond memories of that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm almost in that bracket. I played it through the 90s, but I was born in the late 80s, and as a family. So like my younger sister is 6 years younger than me, and she's played it as well. So she was all excited when I was like, oh, I like ran when I saw that you posted on my Discord, and I'm like, hey, guess what? Guess what? Knocking on her door, like, oh my gosh. We were both like, exciting. So that it's the family game, as it were. And my older brother, who's 7.5 years older than me, is also really excited for. He played through Return of the Castle at launch as well, and we all played through it. And we were kind of seeing, together. We're all playing in the same house in different rooms, and we're like, oh, did you find this? Oh yeah, no, I'm looking here. I haven't gotten 100% yet. We're trying to find that last thing, and it was such an amazing experience. And
I've only had that type of gaming experience a couple of times, and one of them was with a marvelous game called The Witness. If you guys are into puzzle games, like, it's, first of all, it's a gorgeous game, and second of all, it's one of the best puzzle games ever made. And it's not online, but two of my best friends and I played that when it came out, and we played it over Discord. We just had audio chat, and it's the same thing. It's like we didn't want to tell each other any secrets, but it's like, oh, I just found this really amazing thing that's like by the lighthouse. Did you guys see it? And like, oh yeah. And it's just, I love that feeling of discovery in a new, intricate world when you're playing through it with other people and talking about it. It's like the water cooler type experience.
Yeah, that was absolutely what happened with me the first time I played Return of Dark Castle, and it was such an amazing experience. And I got to. I'll never forget that experience. I remember the first time getting to Black Knight and Return of Dark Castle, because I saved that until I did everything else, and so I'm like, I'll get to 100%, but first let me find everything else, and then I'll do it. And so like it was such a crazy build-up because I didn't attempt it at all until I had gotten everything, and so I'm like, what's through that door? We'll find out in a little while. And so I'm like, oh, how do I get this last? I think I had like 5% or something. I'm like, where is the thing? I can't. And I was like, oh.
You were saying if you had infinite budget or something for a 3D game, what would you do? And I think if I had infinite budget, what I'd do is just more secret rooms and more hidden stuff and more slapstick and things, rather than blowing it on 3D. Just more depth. Just you have a room that you get into, and there's 4 or 5 elements you have to overcome, but then to be able to drill down in that room and find more stuff and then open up new areas, that's where I'd probably want to invest in. And then also just invest in just more reactions from the hero, the hapless hero getting beat up, getting hurt, getting stabbed, getting all squashed, whatever you could be. I just do more and more of that.
If you ever want to
come up with a new paradigm. Yeah.
If you ever want inspiration, there's a great supercut of all of the death sequences from Dragon's Lair, and I always had married these two in my head of like, they're both a bumbling knight going through a medieval thing.
Absolutely.
Obviously, it's Bluth and more fantasy-y than Dark Castle, but it still has that very over-animated comedic thing of it. And like every once in a while, you just watch that, and it's like inspirational. Like, oh yeah, there's all different ways because it's silly, and it's just an amazing thing. So if you ever
and I think Dragon's Lair was a big influence on me, because that was right at that time, and I was living in. I'd go to arcades every day. I mean, because that's the only place you go play games back then, and bars, and that was a very inspirational movie or video game to me, for sure. I think a lot of
someday I'll beat it. All right. So last question I have before we turn it over to the chat. So I don't know how familiar any of you are with the Angry Video Game Nerd, a YouTuber before YouTube exists, as it were. Did comedic, overacted reviews of games, and kind of kicked off that whole angry gamer yells at game kind of reviews. And he often reviewed like really bad like licensed NES games, stuff like that. But in like the 2010s or something, he reviewed the Genesis version of Dark Castle, and then later reviewed the CDI version. And unfortunately, for a long time, it kind of colored any time people were talking about Dark Castle online. They would be, reference to this video that was only talking about the terrible port. And I was just like, something like getting getting comments on some of my Dark Castle videos relating to that, and I'm like, what the heck is? Oh, okay. And it's like,
Right.
I was wondering you guys if you're familiar with that and like how painful it is to be like, ugh, like not much.
I think I saw that video, but I love, like, I absolutely love turning on YouTube, like, where after the game came out and even years later, and watching somebody sit down who had never played it before and just hating it. Like, they would just cursing, like, what is, like, I move and I trip and fall, like, this is the stupidest thing I've ever seen. And I'm just like laughing. Like, I don't find it offensive. I just find it interesting because that was my exact reaction when I played it as a kid. It's like, this game is, this is this cool little beautiful world, and I try to move the guy, and it's like bump into the wall and trip, and I'm like, what is this is dumb. Like, I don't get this at all. And so it's just a matter of if you're interested enough in that world to push through, and because you see people do it. It's like, I know people can play this game. There are people who've beaten it, and it's on the hardest level. So can I do it? Am I interested in doing that? So yeah, when I see that stuff where people are just cursing and think it's dumb, and it's like, that's fine. I mean, give it a shot if you want to try.
I think
Go
ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, recently, we've been, working on our outreach and getting keys out to a bunch of content creators, and that's kind of what I've been seeing, Zach. Is that every time I see that, somebody posted new content using our, hashtag, so I get a feed of it on our platforms. But a lot of them are like, they play for about an hour, and it's like, man, this is so hard. Like, I gotta go play something else. And the next game they stream is some, very fun, cozy, relaxing game. And it's like, oh man, I wonder if they're gonna come back. But there've been a couple who, the next day you see them stream the game again, and they're trying at the same level they had to they quit. They're like, oh, I can't play this anymore. But the next day you see them coming back. So I think there's definitely people will come back, and they will have the natural curiosity of like, well, what's past that room? It's cool to see. It's cool.
Right.
Yeah, hopefully we'll erase that awful thing of like, oh, Dark Castle is that old bad game that people got from the Angry Video Game Nerd. Because
I got so used to being an Atari. I would make like we did Road Blasters, and it was a fact if you made an arcade game that sold well, that you could port it to you port it to the 3 consoles that were current at that time, and you would sell 1 million copies, no matter how crappy the port was. And so companies like Atari, who had Tengen, would port every single arcade game we did, and because the platforms were so bad, they were horrible representations. And not only would we port it down to crappy platforms that couldn't handle the compute power it needed to do it properly, people would still buy it. There's that Spectrum game in UK that they had, but then they'd also port it down. I don't know if you remember Tiger games, which were those little LCD games that you play. And I mean, every game I did at Atari ended up as a Tiger game, and it was crap. It was just little tick 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 tick. So you get used to you create this thing, you put your whole life into that version of it. And that's the only one you ever cared about, really. And then, if other people poured it, that was out of your control. That was something the company did to make money. And then, we would get bonuses from the sales of those crappy games, so we didn't hate them. But you got used to seeing very poor representations of something you worked very hard to make nice. It's not so much the case now that computers are totally capable, but back then it was a struggle. It was horrible, some of the ports I had to go through. I'd have to sign off. I'd have to sign off on the NES version of this or that. It was just, I hated it. I know the developer had done as best as you could do, but it just the systems couldn't handle it. Until the Sony PlayStation 1 came along, when finally the home systems were as capable as the arcades. And then that turned the whole world around, where you had Dreamcast and then Virtual Fighter and all those other kind of games that could now be done at home as well. Tekken.
Yep.
So
All right. So that was all the questions I have. So I'm going to start checking that chat. Richard asks another question for Zach/Mark. Any chance of a frame rate unlock for beating Return to Dark Castle, so you can play the whole game at up to, let's say, 1.25 to 1.5 times speed?
Did Richard ask this? Is that what you just said?
Yeah, this is Richard asked this.
It's the only guy out there who is like, oh, Dark Castle's not hard enough. It's got to be. Frame rate unlocked. Okay, well, I'll consider that. I mean, it's funny because when I'm debugging, I have some keys that I can hold down that'll make the character, run really fast because it just turns off the speed limiter for a few seconds so I can get to the other side of the screen. And I have played like that a couple of times. Like, man, this is nuts. It's like bouncing all over the place. And all right, well, I'll put a pin in that one.
Okay. I know
our audience of one.
Yeah.
I know.
This says Richard mode.
Somebody asked.
Chooks, I'll have to test it. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I know it's been asked on the forums a number of times. I don't know if this was a technical reason or not, and I forgot. I grabbed this from earlier, and I forgot to throw it on. But Mark, do you know in the original Dark Castle, if you beat it and then continued into the New Game Plus, essentially, it would increase the bounces of the cups from the Black Knight by 1 each time. So it could go for a certain number of things, and then it just stopped after a certain number of levels. And then after a certain more, I think it stopped giving you lives, but you could continue to play it. It just would be eventually you just would lose to attrition. But yeah, so there's like charts that, like, I think Richard made a chart showing all of the trajectories and bounces that can possibly happen on Black Knight 3.
Oh my god.
Were you familiar with
I did find out, though, I think Beyond has the wrong animation for the running. It's out of sequence.
So I remember on that talking about that like advanced, or I don't even know what it is. It's like the New Game Plus mode or whatever. I remember as a kid reading, I think I read in a magazine, like a Macworld magazine or something, and it had this little paragraph that said, if you beat Dark Castle on advanced, it takes you to, and I'm paraphrasing, but it's something that like an experimental mode that has never been tested. And I was like,
oh my god,
wow, that's amazing. And I tried to do it, and of course I could never beat it on advanced as a kid, but that was the wording that was used in the article. It's totally experimental.
Interesting. Are we going to get that in the in Return of Dark Castle's re-release?
What, the experimental mode? I don't
know. 8 bounces. Okay, so Richard did a thing that says beginner is no bounces, intermediate 1 bounce, advanced 2 bounces, double advanced 3 bounces, triple advanced 4 bounces, and your score is locked. No more score, no more lives. Triple advanced is the final level.
Right.
And then run that back at 2 times speed.
Yeah.
Quadruple advanced.
Right.
I guess that leads into with the level editor this time, we'll be able to remake Black Knight 3, so we can make a harder version for Richard.
I don't know. The problem with that is that the Black Knight was never. I mean, I never did an animation set or program set for him to be able to exist the way that he did in in either of the first 2 games. It's like he and partly because I had too much to do and I didn't want to do it, but the other part was just I decided that the lore was he has moved from one room to the next until he's at the final one. But anyway, in answer to your question, it's like I would have to, I'd have to do special animations and programming in order to make him be able to exist the way that he did, like in those games. So it's not impossible. It will just be some work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sally Cat 7. Now imagining a Richard mode, Dark Castle.
You do the whole press DC to get the video modes. Just type in Richard's name and it just it pops up a whole new difficulty.
So Richard beat the game on triple advanced with no shield or elixirs.
Yeah. All right.
This question for Zach and Mark. Would you consider opening up the file level format or the ability to alter more than the levels, example, your own graphics or music?
Alter them with your own graphics or music. I mean, you can already. Oh, you mean like full replacement, like basically like a reskinning of the game? I don't know. I suppose like back when this was made, there was a lot of I don't know how to explain it. It's almost like when you create something like this, especially something you spent this much time on, it's like you don't want people to tinker with it. And that was a big thing, is like modders going in and like changing the graphics and sound and stuff. And I remember just thinking, it's like, man, I just really don't want that to happen. Even though it's kind of silly, because it's like they bought the thing, they want to play around with it, they're inspired to try changing how the game works. So I went through a lot of effort to, encode things in certain ways in all those levels and stuff, so that only the level editor could be used to go in and change all of that stuff. But the graphics themselves are not, you can go in and just replace like the PNG files and sound and stuff. I mean, it's not locked out in that aspect. But yeah, I don't really know how to answer that, because it was never really designed to be modded in that way. Although I don't really have anything against it now. It's just not set up for it.
Gotcha. Somebody asked earlier, Mark, if you were ever able to locate the source code for the original 2 Dark Castle games.
Nope. Charlie, I reached out to Charlie Jackson and Joe Williams, and all of that got transferred to Aldous, who got all the rights to Dark Castle right after Charlie Jackson sold Super Paint and his whole company to Aldous, who had something called PageMaker, for those of you who remember that. And that was the last time Charlie saw it. And then Joe Williams said he has a version on CD somewhere, and he's retired now, and I asked him if he found it, and he hasn't come up with it yet. So no, I have not found the source code for that. And even if we did, I talked to Jon Gay about it. Getting that to work would be a whole thing in itself. We're working now with some folks here to figure out how to emulate it and sell a package that way, and that's probably the best way to do it now. But yeah, the source code 68,000 is non-existent.
Yeah, I think it would be more fascinating as a historical piece rather than useful as a piece to get them working. I mean, a lot of it's like assembly code and stuff like that, from my understanding. So, yeah, I mean, it would probably be.
John said the UI was done in Pascal, but everything else was assembler, 68,000 assembler.
Yeah, right. So that would be. At some point, you just got to go, hey, let's just remake the code, because it's to take about the same amount of time.
Yeah. That's why I'm very excited about the solution with the emulator and the AMS solution is that you can play the exact game. So I'm really keen on getting that out there, and hopefully we can get it out soon.
Yeah. Let's see if I missed anything. Quick scroll through the chat.
I'm watching Quagmire here. It is very Dark Castle-y.
It uses the same control scheme exactly. It's Q is action, E is duck.
Sorry.
The mouse is aim your rocks. You pick up like things of rocks to shoot. Like it's so very Dark Castle. It's just the only difference is movement has momentum, which Dark Castle does not, which makes the platform, I think, worse. But
yeah, it would sound. It's just called Quagmire.
Yeah, it's called Quagmire.
Yeah. Okay, I'll look that up too.
Yep.
Just for fun.
I just had the video running in the background here while we're talking. I look up every now and then and see the floating rocks definitely look like they might have even used the same part.
I mean, the 90s in gaming and shareware, right? Like, so much copyrighted stuff was just shoved in everything. I remember hearing the scream from Doug Zartman from Marathon. That scream was in so many shareware Mac games, and I know none of them licensed it. Like, that just was a iconic Mac scream, and everyone's like, "Oh, well, that's a nice scream. I like it. I will use it."
Yep.
Doug Zartman, by the way, if you've never talked with him, he is a sweetheart of a guy. He for some of the stuff I was working on with Myth, he reached out and chatted with him. And he gave me some new voice clips for something I was working on. So
nice.
But real nice guy. Let's see here. Richard said, technically, it's a shame that the PC port was the most advanced and accurate to the Mac port because of it still had the triple advanced stuff that none of the other ports kept in.
It's just that it paused every time you play the sound effect. Yeah.
Yeah, like, it's not a good thing, but it's interesting. Let's see. Dark Castle hits a real sweet spot of cartoonish and serious style. Yeah, I agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
Discussion in here about how Prince of Persia initially went 3D in the early 2000s, like that, called Prince of Persia 3D, and that went horribly. So
it's funny because I have a fairly fond memory of playing like one of the early Prince of Persia 3D games, and I don't remember it being an unenjoyable experience at all. I thought it was pretty cool.
Was it Sands of Time, like in 2003?
I think so. Maybe
that was
probably...
that was not the first 3D one. They tried the original team. I think
okay.
the first two made one in like it looked like an Unreal game or something. It was like that era.
Oh, gotcha.
And
I definitely didn't play that.
Nobody remembers that game, so except for chat apparently. So
yeah.
To Zach, read the source code. Have you considered checking how close ChatGPT can get to decompiling the binary to C?
That question was for me?
Apparently.
I'm not sure how to answer that. I mean, I think that's the large language models could probably handle something like, it would be a very hands-on approach, but getting something, like the assembly language converted into a normal format, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility.
It gets you about, my experience with LLMs is they get you about 87% of the way there.
That's specific. Also, Richard says Quagmire suffers from not really having any atmosphere to it, especially compared to Dark Castle.
Yeah.
Right.
I just never heard of it before, so.
I mean, it was one of those things I had played definitely like among the 90s where there was so many shareware games floating. And it was just, it probably was on a demo disc or something where they had like 500 demos and I played it. And, it kind of, I remember struggling with the platforming back in the day and didn't remember too much more about it. But then somebody mentioned years later that, oh yeah, it's a Dark Castle clone. I was like, gosh darn it, now I can't unsee that. All right. Well, if we have any other questions here from chat or people watching the stream, does anybody want to chime in at all? And if you don't, actually, let me check.
Like I say, I saw Shade posted one. I don't know if it was a question for us or just in general, but he said in Mario Maker there's a bunch of separate categories for levels. For example, there's super hard levels and comedy levels that mess with the player in silly ways. What sort of levels do you guys expect to see once the editor is done? I remember, I don't know, we haven't really gone super in depth on it, but I remember we discussed it might be kind of cool to be able to set like, specific conditions for the level. So like your character conditions. So, you only get 5 rocks and you get 1 life. Go beat the level. So you can't just willy-nilly just throw rocks and spam them or keep it completely separate from your main save. But yeah, I don't know if that's if anything specific you guys wanted to see.
Yeah, Chris had talked to me about that some years ago and talking about ways of basically setting up. I mean, he had mentioned like power-up limitations, like starting a custom level, but you don't have like fireball or shield or things like that, just to make it more of a challenge. So that's certainly something that's easy enough to do. And this time around, like working in Unity is so much nicer than what we had to when back in the day when I was doing all this stuff in Xcode. That it makes being able to have the freedom to play around with some of these little things like far more approachable than they were. So.
Yeah, did you see for my level set behind Dark Castle how I gated the player?
I haven't yet, but I'm ready.
Okay,
I want to. As soon as we get it up and running, that's going to be the first level set I get into. I promise.
Yeah. So what I did was I went, okay, well, if you can't, I can't prevent people from bringing power ups and stuff in. So we made me and Richard made a player file that had 9 lives. So they collected just enough orbs and stuff to get 9 lives, but no power ups or pickups beyond that. And then you could just take that in.
Fun.
And then we went,
okay.
So how do I gate the player? Because I don't want to give power ups or anything in there. So what I did was I went. There's the level paths. One of them takes you to a melee weapon, so like a shovel or something. One of them takes you to a bomb, and one of them takes you to, I think, fuel, and then there might be one that takes you to a key, I think. And you need all of those items to get to the last boss and to finish the level set. And so it gave
fun. That's really clever.
And then since I went, oh, well, you can't fall off screen because it'll take you to the dungeon in the main game. I put at the bottom of each of the levels, I basically had it be essentially a scrolling level, but you wouldn't see the bottom scroll unless you fell off, and you'd fall into a giant hate bale, and then the only exit from that point was to a dungeon I made, so it wouldn't take you out of it. So it's like I worked around all of the things, but it'd be amazing to just,
That's some real ingenuity there to get past all those hurdles. Good job.
Yeah, so I mean, and so I have a whole castle with a map that I made that has all of the rooms connected and such. But it's roughly, I think it's about the size of the original Dark Castle, maybe 1 or 2 levels larger. I'm not sure, but there's a lot of ways I looked to get around it. But all right, so
when I start doing the custom level stuff for the new game, I will be using your level set as the testing, the benchmark to get it up and running.
So I posted in chat. I don't know if you can see it, Zach. Somebody asked about the two different of the anti-room versions from screenshots and was asking about the differences on them. They posted it. I think
are you talking about the ones that I'm seeing in your background, like the old ones?
Some of them have been flashing there, yeah. But somebody posted in the Return to Dark Castle channel on here. I reposted it into the chat that we're in right now. So, let's see. Articus Dent says he's been making progress disassembling Dark Castle games slowly. So, let's go. Get hype.
Yeah. So was there a specific question for me about the anti-rooms? Like, I didn't follow what you were asking there.
Yeah, let me see here. Yeah, so it's in the Return to Dark Castle channel on this Discord. Posted it by Yuletide Christoph.
Let's see. Can you guys still hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. I was just making sure I could switch here. Let's see. Return to Dark Castle. Yeah. The old like iterations of the skull. Yeah. I mean, as far as shedding light on him, it's just they just started off. I mean, the differences between like the jaw positions were just. I mean, it was just kind of sloppy experimentation at the beginning. It's like, oh, I'll put a skull on the wall, and then it's like, I want it to be a door. It's like, well, now I'm looking at it going, well, the teeth, the mouth should probably be closed. The teeth should line up so that when it can open, it reveals this thing behind it. I mean, that's all it is, and it's just like. Changing the shape of the eye sockets and stuff to like make it more intimidating and things. It's just the other image that I keep seeing go behind you is the one with the dragon, and the dragon was basically like brought in from the two-headed dragon, the Beyond Dark Castle one, and it's like, oh, I'll do a dragon door, but then at some point in the process of the development, it's like, well, we have this level editor. It would be super cool to just make all the original levels in the game. And so then, Beyond Dark Castle came into play, and it's like, okay, well, I don't want to have a dragon in both rooms. We'll do the dragon, the great big oak door, and then the skull. So that's why that transitioned over that way.
There we go. There's the answer for you.
Yeah.
All right. I unless anybody's got any final questions, I think we'll start to wrap it up.
Yeah. All right.
Richard says he got one more, so let's wait for a second. People commenting that the animated dragons in Beyond Dark Castle were cool.
Yeah, for sure. And again, that was one of those things. It's like, I could do that. It's going to be a lot of work. You're not really going to see it unless you're actually. There has to be some way to animate it when you're in that room. But
yeah, I've been thinking about that for the new game and looking at those, and it's a lot of work.
So he's asking, did you mean for the Dragon and Shield 2 actually be skippable? So that, I mean, that's in line with the original games. You could do that. I guess
So
maybe
Mark,
the question was for Mark.
Yeah, so in Shield 2, there's the dousing the dragon with the water from the bucket above, but you were able to jump by.
It was a hot tub. Hot tubs were popular in the late 80s, so it was a hot tub.
That's funny.
I didn't know
and
that.
I don't remember. I remember you had to douse them to put them out, but I don't know if you could skip it or not. It could be the case.
You could. You could just time it just right and run right past it.
Yeah.
I never even thought to try that when I was testing. I went up there and dumped water every single time.
I know, the funny thing is, I feel like when I was a kid, I figured that out early on, and it's like, and I don't even know that I ever went up and dumped the water. It's like, why would I do that? I just run past it. I just jump past it. I don't know that it was ever intended.
Yeah, let's see here. All right, well, first of all, I want to say a big thank you to all of you that came to be part of this. Zach, Mark.
Yeah, for sure.
You guys all rock. Thank you for giving me the floor to make this happen. Because, like, who am I? I'm just somebody on the internet, right? Like, so really, thank you for giving me the time, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to chat with you, let you talk your ears off, or have me talk my ear off. And a big thanks to everybody that stopped by and asked questions and just listened to all this silly nonsense. A big hug to the whole community. I love you all for keeping this torch going, and it's exciting going into a timeline where we actually are getting a new Dark Castle game, Mark. Like, that was never something that was ever on my go card.
Well, it's on mine now, and I'm very excited about it.
First, isn't it? Like,
the whole journey's been very interesting because since I decided to go back and do it, then I find out about this Discord channel, and I already knew about Zach, but then Zach has a thing on Unity, and then Ben jumped in without even asking to join and help me on the new Dark Castle, and then hooking up with Nickolas again, and just building up the momentum. The group's growing here. And it's fun to see the responses, and we have a number of people on the wish list now, and it's just nice to see there's something there. And I really want to the last game I work on is I want to make it really a polished piece that harkens back to the some of the specialness that was in the original Dark Castle. Hopefully I can capture that, and it's just been great having this community to support and find out stuff, and I'm looking forward also to just getting out the old versions as well, and, have a nice DCU, if we will, have our own DCU here. And know that and have fun. And I'm hoping too, with the level editor, we can get enough people on the level editor that, I think having UGC will help fuel the community. And, level editor is one step of it, and whether or not we end up selling hats or whatever, I don't know if we'll do that. We're not even talking about that, but I'd like to, get it live and make the fantasy real, for a lot of people, and re-spark that. So.
Oh yeah, one more thing I guess is I've had a few people ask on Discord and otherwise, like, when's the console release happening? And I have to be like, well, it might happen.
Well, it'll be easy to do a console release, because it's in Unity. But it's really a question of the uptake, and how many people actually download the game and play the game to make sure it's commercially worth doing. Most of the other platform games. It seems like when you get to like 100,000 units, that's kind of when it makes sense. But we'll see. I'd love to get it on Switch. I mean, I'd be very happy to get it on Switch. But then again, the controller, it's really a keyboard game. But I'd love to get it on Switch. It's definitely something that Zach and I both want to do that. But whether or not it merits that effort, we'll have to see.
Right.
Yes.
I'm hoping we release this game, and it does decently. Mac, they're going to feature it on Mac App Store, hopefully, once that gets through review. And that'll help build the audience as well. And, whether or not people want to, tough it out and beat the game and get involved and get hooked on the game, we'll have to see, in 40 years later, if it's still current or not, or if it's just nostalgia play.
40 years from now, I better go. All right, my guys. Well,
right.
I want to see. I hope you
Oh,
you all have give yourself a hug, give yourself a high five, and find a reason. Yeah, there you go. Find a reason to smile every day. So, all right.
Right on. Hey, thanks, Chris.
Thank you all. Thank you all so much. Really appreciate it. Take care.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.
Take care.
Good night.
Bye, guys.
Night.